mastery of life really starts with mastery of breath. And the more that we're present and aware of our current breath, the less that we're anxiously worried about, the future and what the future holds, and the less that we're depressed about the things that have happened in the past. And when we're in that moment, that present moment, that holy moment, that still moment, and we're with our breath, we have no choice but to be present with the moment and present with our existing reality. And that really is mastery of life in every form, as far as I'm concerned.
So very welcome today. My special guest today is a man who has dedicated his life to breathwork. And his passion to this work has inspired me, and I did learn a lot. But before we go into breathwork, let me introduce to you Brian Kelly. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Beyonce, thank you very much for that very nice introduction. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. So you really dedicated your life the last years to the breathwork, and you developed a lot of new things concerning breathwork, which has never been on this planet before. But before we go into it, and I have a lot of questions from as well students already, what was your path to do this kind of work? So where did you come from, and why are you doing it?
That's a
Long
very good
story.
place to start. That's a very good place to start. What is my path? I suppose my path can be best described as an all over the place kind of path. Um, it's funny, I put a social media post out not long ago where I detailed every job that I've had since I graduated university, and it was actually since the beginning of my work life. And the amount of all over the placeness in that is absolutely astounding. It's funny because it's sometimes things don't make sense in life until we look at it in hindsight. And so much of what I did in my earlier life was preparing me without me realizing it for the work that I'm taking on now. Even going all the way back to my university days, it's like I changed my major 4 or 5 times. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And until my 5th year, I went and saw the counselor and I said, look, all my friends are graduating and I'm not yet. Like, which degree am I closest to receiving? And she looked in her computer and she said, you're only 30 units away from a degree in communications. And I said, communications it is. And so I didn't realize that so much of what I was going to be finishing out my university days with in communications and management was going to position me very well to be an entrepreneur and to get into management and manage people and do all these things. I think my spiritual journey really started where it became a conscious process in 2010, where I started to wake up to understanding that the world isn't quite what we're led to believe that it is. And it was very much a quest for truth and understanding. And that led me down a lot of very deep rabbit holes of study. And I ended up as a radio show broadcaster in 2011 or 2012. And very fringe. I was very much talking to people, whistleblowers, talking about various let's just call it counterculture subjects. It kind of introduced me to a lot of different ideologies and modalities and worldviews and the study of culture and the study of healing. And I think what really kicked off for me when I ultimately landed in Bali in 2015. And so I bounced around different projects when getting here. And my first exposure to breathwork is actually a story I don't really tell all that often. I was running a big project, and it was a very high stress project. I was a project director for a big build project. And there was one particular day where my nervous system was shot. I was just very stressed, very overwhelmed. And there was one guy who was a really good friend of mine. I said, look, I know that he does a lot of healing work and personal development work and different types of modalities. I said, do you have anything that can help to calm my nerves? And he immediately went to this breathing practice. And it was only about 30 seconds. I think it was something very simple, like a breath of fire practice or something. And I practiced this breath work for 30 seconds. And I just remember everything got quiet and still. And whatever this nerves were and all this overwhelm just got completely remedied in such a short period of time. And so it put breath on my radar, but it wasn't the time to activate it yet. And I think probably a year went by, and I was studying YouTube. I came across a Wim Hof video on YouTube, and Wim Hof was being interviewed, and he was being interviewed around manipulating biochemistry. And he said, "Let me guide you through a technique." And so I said, "Okay, well, I got nothing else better to do." I went through this Wim Hof practice, and he guided us into this breath hold. And I remember looking at my watch during this breath hold, and I passed by the 3rd minute of holding my breath. I had no breath holds training at all whatsoever. And here I am manipulating my biochemistry in such a way that 1 minute was the longest I'd ever been able to hold my breath up until this point. Now, all of a sudden, I'm holding my breath for 3 minutes. And that really kind of anchored in, there's something going on here that's very powerful. And still, I wasn't quite ready to pursue it as a venture just yet. That came in 2018. And I was invited to my first somatic breathwork journey experience. And I was building a couple different projects at the time. And again, found myself in a place where my nervous system was very shot. And I had heard about this phenomenon of somatic breathwork and long guided breathing journey experiences. And I had already had these few different, small experiences that led up to this. But what happened on that day that was the anchor point. That was the mind exploding emoji experience where, doing a full 60 minutes of somatic breathing opened up so much. I was in a room with others that had never done it before as well. And what I witnessed that day, not only for myself, but what I witnessed in the participants that were there, was nothing short of miraculous. It was like there was people struggling with very severe mental health challenges that were there that day, very severe physiological struggles and insomnia and stress and anxiety and depression. And listening to the stories of how this one journey impacted these people it was almost like that was the defining moment of my dharma being activated, because I couldn't believe how effective this thing was. And it was such a short period of time. It was mesmerizing for me to even consider how it was possible that not everybody in the world knows about this. I immediately started asking, why, if this is so powerful, why doesn't everyone know about this? Why aren't we teaching it to children in schools? Why aren't we prescribing it as medicine in clinics? And so that was like my new rabbit hole of exploration. That if this is this impactful and this powerful, I need to take it to the depths and see where it goes. And that was really the beginning for me, was really just becoming an embodied student and being a very active breather. And the amount of stress and tension I was able to relieve, and the amount of anxiety that I was able to heal in my own life, I'll probably write a book about someday. It was so black and white. It was such a contrast for where my life felt before and where it felt after, that it became, it very quickly became God's calling. I said, if this is so activated and alive inside of me, then I couldn't imagine doing anything else other than becoming an evangelist for this work and sharing with everybody that's willing to receive it. Because fast forward 5 or 6 years since that original journey, I've just seen this work transform the lives of literally thousands of people who have gone through some of the most challenging things. Some of the stories that I've heard of things that people have been through to this day are shocking. The level at which breath work was able to be the relief in their life when they had allegedly tried everything under the sun and nothing was effective, and the only thing that was able to work was breath. And so here we are now as a result of that pursuit, and the pursuit it still continues to persist, because where we can go with what we can do with breath work, and then the advent of all of this new technology that we're putting on top of it, I think we're really just scratching the surface for the development of where things are headed.
I think so. I think you mentioned someday breath is life, so breathe to live. And you know, my experience was I had the privilege to be with my mother when she died, and I could hold her hand. And she took some breath and one deep breath, and then she went. And you know, this exhalation, and then everything was in the room. So it was the most amazing experience for me. And at that moment, I knew breath is life in this area where we are now. And there is another life as well, because it's obvious that there is something else.
Yeah.
And through this breath work I experience as well, it's really the connection between your own breath and body, and if you so-called the higher self, and something which is more than us.
That's it. And the most ancient scriptures all point back to the breath. You know, if you look at the first page of book of Genesis and the Bible, God breathed life into Adam. It's the Sanskrit word for breath is life force, is spirit. And when we inhale, the how you say that scientifically is inspiration. So we inhale, it's the first thing that we do when we come into life. We take that big first breath as a baby, and we're getting inspired, and it's the inspiration that takes us into life and then animated life and wherever it goes on our journey and our path. And then when we take that final exhale, like you witnessed with your mother, that's expiration, to expire, you know, to say goodbye, to move on to the next realms. And it's a wild thing, because you know, the average person breathes for 20 to 25,000 breaths per day. And a big central theme of my message is, how many of those are we present for and we aware of? And the reality is, the answer to that question for most people is not nearly enough. Most people will go their whole life not paying attention to the very fit thing that sustains them in their breath. And so I've become so fascinated by the story that is our breath, and how can we maximize our relationship with it to live a more healthy and grounded life. And sometimes it's as simple as the simplest things, like just becoming aware of our breath anchors us to the present moment. You know, mastery of life really starts with mastery of breath. And the more that we're present and aware of our current breath, the less that we're anxiously worried about, you know, the future and what the future holds, and the less that we're depressed about the things that have happened in the past. And when we're in that moment, that present moment, that holy moment, that still moment, and we're with our breath, we have no choice but to be present with the moment and present with our existing reality. And that really is mastery of life in every form, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm. Yeah, because when you are in this alignment with yourself, with your soul, nothing else matters. Yeah. And I got to know you last year when I visited Bali, and I had the privilege that you worked with me in a special way of, you call it 9D breathwork. So this is something you have developed. This is something you have discovered. Would you please share the core and the main thing, what it is all about, the 9D?
Yeah, of course. I mean, 9D kind of discovered me. It's one of those things it's hard for me to really take credit for, because it was such a divinely inspired creation. I mean, I've told the story many times that, you know, the idea for 9D came to me in a dream. And it came on the back end of a great amount of frustration during COVID time, of, you know, guiding sessions on Zoom and very inconsistent solid internet connection in Bali. And so I wanted to perfect the sound delivery experience of breath work, and not and have it be a not so dependent on the quality of the internet of the day. And so after this session that I had, this very frustrating online session where the internet wasn't so great, I must have been workshopping in my dream that night the idea that came as 9D breathwork, because when I woke up in the morning, it was like an explosion of insight. It was almost like, I mean, it had a name already, 9D breathwork. And it's actually very simple when you strip it back. Like, 9D sound is not anything I created. 9D sound was popularized in electronic music. It's now expanded into multiple different genres of music on YouTube. So if you like Google or YouTube search 9D music, 9D is just spatial sound. So it's traveling sound. Sometimes the sound is coming out of the right channel and it's over here, and sometimes it's over there. Sometimes it's above, sometimes it's behind. And when I first heard 9D sound, it struck me as a wow experience of audible listening, an audible listening experience, but it wasn't anything that had any practical utility for my life. And so when I woke up that next morning and I had this idea of 9D breath work, it was one of those ideas where it was like, okay, somebody's got to be doing that. Somebody's got to be doing something like this, because 9D is already a powerful audio experience. Breath work is very much on the map now. The whole industry of breathwork is booming. Somebody must have put the two together, and I couldn't find anything that was even remotely close to it, and that blew my mind. And once I started to get on this hamster wheel of creativity, I realized, when you're working in the realm and the domain of sound, there's so much landscape of pure potential in regards to creative output of what you can do with it. So when my mind started going down this track, I immediately started to bring other things into it. Binaural beats, certain tunings, 432 hertz tunings, solfeggio frequencies, isochronic tones. All of these things are part of the sound healing domain that's been popularized by the advent of sound healing becoming a thing. And so essentially all I've done so far is I've taken proven modalities that exist in the world as standalone offerings, for example, breathwork, for example, binaural beats. And then I brought in other elements like hypnotic therapy, subliminal messages, all things that can be delivered through the medium of sound. And I just put it together in a comprehensive way that had never been done before. And so essentially I'm kind of, I suppose what I've created is just a creative landscape whereby sound healing technologies and technologies of healing can be brought under one umbrella. And essentially what that led to is the creation of 9D breathwork. And 9D just stands for 9-dimensional. So there's 9 different layers of things that are happening inside of the 9D breathwork experience. I didn't create any single one of them. I've just combined them into a parfait of creative expression that is unique and novel to the healing world. And I think that what we're doing right now with 9D breathwork is really just the beginning of what it will ultimately become, because there's an infinite amount of things. Just like, you put an artist next to a blank canvas, there's an infinite amount of things they can do on that canvas. It's a very similar creative environment for what can be done with sound and healing. And so it's a fun playground to play in for sure.
Yeah, but it's your creation, it's like a cook who has ingredients and he is special, to do a delicious meal. So you have done something really special, and I was blown away when I experienced the very first time. Because I had a little bit of experience in breath work, because my Chinese master started to teach me how to breathe in the belly and stuff like that in 1987 already, but I've never had experienced this kind of depth, And what I as well feel very special is that it's not only breath, it's the guidance you give, and it's the guidance you develop and you create. So for me, it's as well a specialty that you have special themes like clearing the ancestors or something else. So are these things you just create because people are asking to release special kind of things, or how does it work?
Yeah, this is one of the unique elements of this style of breathwork.
Yeah.
When I was guided on my first breathwork experience without all the 9D, but by a coach who brought me through a narrative arc, I had never experienced someone guiding my psyche, essentially, and my subconscious through an experience. And so when I had first experienced that, before 9D ever even came to life, I knew this was the way, because you could bring every element of human struggle and suffering into a theme, you know? So if somebody has, you know, some kind of mental struggle with anxiety or depression or overwhelm, or they have issues with, you know, money blocks or creating abundance, there's an infinite playground of potential themes to explore there. And so the ones that I did that I've done all the way up until this point are the ones that I was inspired to create because it was either a struggle of my own or I got some kind of a download of something that wanted to come into form. And so, like, just using as an example the healing ancestral trauma, I hosted a breathwork retreat in Iceland last March, and we were in a sweat lodge and calling in our ancestors as part of this sweat lodge experience. And I got a visualization in that. I got a visual that came in. It's like, wow, what an amazing arc of creation to like bring someone in their inner world through visualization into the forest, into a sweat lodge, calling in their ancestors to heal their ancestral trauma. I had already done quite a bit of work on generational trauma and ancestral trauma, so the theme was already there, but the visualization, the download that I got brought it into form. And so that's essentially what happened to create the landscape of what now has become healing the ancestral trauma journey. So the answer to that question is it really I have to have a personal connection to the theme. Like there's certain journeys that I just haven't been able to create on my own. So I'm collaborating with others to create, like the reconnecting with the inner child experience that you may or may not have done yet. I had a very charmed childhood. It was very challenging for me to come up with a theme around healing childhood trauma because I just didn't have any conscious childhood big trauma imprints. I've all the same small ones, the rejection, the shaming, the abandonment. But they have to be the themes that I create are something that have to speak to me specifically based on my life experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is amazing. You know, I'm I was educated by you now to do all the things as well, and I'm guiding women at the moment through the breathwork session, self-love and forgiveness. And this is amazing. And I'm so happy that I could use your script and your music and everything. And it's something special and something deep that the women are writing to me afterwards, weeks afterwards, that it still has changed her life, one single session. And I think this is the combination of all you have created. I by myself would never had done the script like you did it, and it's wonderful. So it's such a great gift what you are giving to the world. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I appreciate
Because in every session we release so much energy and information. So for me, this is the kind of work where we can really raise the energy on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you know, the definition of holotropic is in holotropic breathwork is coming a return to wholeness. And really that's what life, you know, is all about. We've got all of these these traumas and these imprints and these struggles and this pain and this suffering. And life is just about returning to the wholeness that we already are, that lives inside of us beyond all of this stuff that we picked up along the way. And what breathwork does, probably arguably more powerfully and more effective than all the rest, is it just allows the speeding up of that process of coming back to the truth of who we really are, the wholeness of our human expression. And when we are living with all this built up tension and all this trauma, we see the world through the lens of struggle. We see the world through the lens of our past suffering, all these, you know, these subconscious programs that we picked up along the way. And this is what causes so many people to live a very in the shadow, the lurkiness of what hasn't been resolved in their inner world. And that's not a happy life. That's not a fulfilling life. That's not a rewarding life. It's a life really that is hijacked and commandeered by through the living life through the lens of a struggle. And breath work really allows us a very effective, a very safe, and a very fast way of bringing this residue that we're carrying in our body to the surface, to release it, so that when it's gone, essentially all we're doing is we're we're wiping the mud from our very dirty lenses. And so once this energy, this residue that we're releasing in breath work through this process of catharsis that is facilitated and is triggered through the breath, that allows us to see the world more clearly. It allows us to return to the feeling beings that we are, to allow us to really see the struggles that we've gone through as gifts of adversity that allows us to really become the amazing beings that we came here to be and designed to be. And so it's really a process of just getting out of our own way. And breathwork allows us to do that in just a really powerful way. And it's no surprise that the modality is booming the way that it is across the world, is because people are waking up to realize how effective that it is. And so being on the front lines of that in regards to creative applications that can be brought out to various different groups, it's like you're working with women. We have students that are working with people struggling, Army veterans struggling with PTSD, children that are going through really challenging times through schools. Like there's so many different focal areas where the human condition and what's going on in the world, there's a great deal of struggle. And I think that breath work as an entry point to remedying some of these things is the very obvious solution that has been proven to do a lot of good.
Ryan, when you started, or when we start our conversation, you said you had the first experience with a very short breathing experience, where everything falls away and you could become more calm and etc. I'm always been asked, so what kind of breath besides a whole full session is helpful for what? So I know that the 5 in, 5 out is really centering and bringing us into coherence, brain and heart. So what would you recommend for people who say, okay, what can I do during the day?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've got my library of kind of go-to techniques that I would do, but like what I did that day was, I can't remember if this was the actual technique or not, but it was an activating breathing technique, and it was just breath of fire. Breath of fire is kind of one of those pranayama, sympathetic nervous system activation breathwork practices that are very widespread and very commonly known. And breath of fire is simply you do that for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And what that's going to do is it's going to slow down an overactive mind, because this is where we're generating the majority of our struggles. It's just getting overwhelmed up here. And so what these activation techniques are good for is just a nice healthy shock to the nervous system. And so anything kind of sympathetic activating is going to be good for focus. It's going to be good for concentration. It's going to be good for like before a workout. But really for me, it's to quiet an overactive mind. I feel like this is one of the struggles that's such a common theme for so many people is my mind is racing, my monkey mind is activated. I don't know how to calm it down. I don't know how to come back to myself. And so these kind of fast activated breathing techniques is a really good way to kind of give your nervous system a little bit of a shock, because what happens when that little quick session is done is we default back to a rest state very quickly. So we might be doing some kind of activating breathing technique for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes is more than enough. And then we're going to come back more clear, more collected, more balanced, more grounded. And these sessions don't take a lot of time. There's one of my favorites, breathing techniques. It's called the 10-20-30 method. You probably learned it inside of Breath Masters. It's 10 deep mouth breaths, 10-second breath hold, 20 more of the same, 20-second breath hold, and then the final round, 30 mouth breaths, and then a 60-second breath hold. You do that, and whatever it was that you were worried about or obsessing on in the moment is going to absolutely it's going to come back down to the ground, and it's going to dissolve into oblivion, because we're essentially what we're doing when we're doing these techniques is we're turning down the volume on the monkey mind.
Yeah. And what I've personally loved to do is holding my breath. Now, during this training, I can hold my breath 4 minutes. And it's like an expansion where I say I never want to breathe anymore. It's such a good space we can create for ourselves, and not only for ourselves. If we do it, it's influencing the whole environment. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Breathwork has a massive ripple effect onto the world because what happens to our relationships when we become softer and more grounded within ourselves? What happens to our relationships with our family, with our relationships with our friend, with our relationships with the outer world? You know, everything is a ripple that ripples out from us. And so the more that we spend time quieting the mind, activating the body, becoming still, becoming grounded, you know, this is ultimately the embodiment of be the change you want to see in the world, as Gandhi said. And so the more that we practice, this is what self-work is all about, then the more that the world benefits at large. And that's the ripple at work. And so this is always my big suggestion to all new students is these big activation sessions, these big somatic breathwork journeys are great, but really the long-term sustainable value in breath is carving out time every single day to simply become aware of your natural breathing rhythm, to slow your breath down, to allow ourselves to really come back into that space of quiet. And this is huge benefits for our life on so many different levels, is to just be in practice with our breath and familiarize ourselves with all the many benefits. And there's a great many for sure.
Yes, Brian, before we close our conversation, I have two last questions. The
Please.
first question is, what do you wish or want for the world? And what do you wish or want for yourself?
Oh gosh, what great. What do I wish? What do I wish for the world? I wish for the meek to inherit the earth, for harmony. You know, I wish for the people to wake up to realize the biggest threat to the existing system of control in this hierarchy is people waking up and realizing how incredibly powerful they are and standing in the sovereignty and the autonomy of their own power and rising up and questioning narratives and realizing that we have the ability to carve out a way of life that's in harmony with ourselves, with each other, with nature, without all this conflict. And that's what I wish for the earth is a harmonious landing from the incredible chaos that is ever present when we look around ourselves in every direction at the moment, taking back that control and realizing that we have the ability to create that world if we so choose. And we're doing that within our community and beyond. What I wish for myself is to be that North Star of, I don't like being, when people give me compliments about me being inspiring to their life and things like that, the first thing that I want to do is express gratitude, but also hold up a mirror to show people that whatever they see in me that's inspiring is something that's activated within themselves as well. And ultimately, I just want to live a life by example. My biggest goal for my life is when I'm old and I'm at that point where I'm ready to expand into the next chapter of wherever life goes beyond this life, I want to look back at my life and be able to take stock and see that I've made the biggest impact I can possibly make with my time here, and made and been the best influence for my children that I can possibly be. And so I'm very lucky and blessed to say that that's the path that I'm living on right now. And so if that's the world that I want to leave behind, I just need to keep doing what I'm already doing.
That's wonderful. So wonderful. Thank you. It was a great honor to have you here, Brian, and it's a great gift for me to know you and to meet with you again. So thanks from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Beate. Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey and tell others about this channel. And please subscribe.